Hey guys, welcome back to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So today we're back with another Jinx supplementary guide. Now, a couple of days ago, or almost a week ago at this point, we've taken a look at Stormrazor on Jinx, right? Of course, Bloodthirster on Jinx is her default build, which we've covered in her updated complete guide quite a while ago. And today we're going to be taking a look at the third option for your first item, which is Shield Bow. So, Jinx pretty much can go for all three items as a first item, and the rest of the build pretty much remains the same. Regardless of which first item you choose. So really you have three first item options, right? Bloodthirst as a default, Stormrazor for snowballing, and Shield Bow for safety, right? And of course, in I believe it was yesterday's video, we also just taken a look at Sivir and explaining Bloodthirster versus Shield Bow on Sivir. So I guess we're kind of rehashing that a little bit in today's video in case you guys didn't see yesterday's one. But let's get straight into the build. Right, so first we're going to start with the Gluttonous Grease for the early AD and Omnivamp, and then the linchpin of the build, which is what I'm kind of explaining here, is going to be Shield Bow. You get decent amount of stats, a little bit of AD, attack speed, and Vamp, but you mostly get the Lifeline passive for the extra shield and extra safety. And then you have Rune's Hurricane, more attack speed, as well as being able to attack multiple people at the same time. And of course with Jinx's Rockets, you do AoE onto multiple people at the same time as well. So overall, just a really solid item. And then you have Magnetic Blaster, more attack speed, and most importantly the bonus range, just to get an extra poke, hopefully get an extra assist or kill, and reset your passive. And then the last two items is really standard, i.e. for the increased crit damage as well as the huge amount of AD, and of course you have Mole Reminder for the armor pen as well as the grievous wounds. And for the runes, the standard ADC loadout, Lethal Tempo for the attack speed and range, Brutal because you auto-attack a ton, Giant Slayer to deal with the health builders and the tanks, Alacrity for more attack speed, as well as Bone Plating for the defensive capabilities. Now for the summoner spells, you always want to go for Flash, and for the other one, you can go for Ghost. Ghost is the most optimal, if you don't need anything else, but if you do want to take your cleanse or your barrier and exhaust, right? So with all that said, let's talk about the gameplay. Okay, so now let's take a look at the gameplay. Now I'm gonna only briefly cover certain points because I've kind of talked to them to death and in the last couple of days videos. Like I talked about the Bloodthirster versus Stormrazor argument. I talked about the Bloodthirster versus Shield Bow argument in the videos on the last couple of days, like the previous Jinx video, the Sivir video, the Caitlyn video, even a ton of these videos. So I'm not gonna kind of keep hammering on the same points, right? I'm gonna talk about certain other things, right? So but first, briefly, just talking about Jinx's support. As I normally mention, Jinx can kind of play with any support, like she works with anybody, but personally I prefer playing with hardcore, buffing kind of style enchanters like Yuumi, Lulu, Emilio, these kind of champions that can really scale very well with her and then buff her up in the mid and late game where she reaches her peak, right? But it also means that in the early game you're going to be slightly weaker because you cannot really do very much. And also, I do remember this gameplay, I don't play very well in the early game, I kind of mess up quite a bit, which we will, we will see, right? And we're against a Jhin and Zyra, which is a very aggressive early game combo, right? Jhin has really high damage in the early game, and Zyra is really strong early game with her poke. And honestly, I've ranked Zyra in like the S tier supports, but I'm kind of thinking of moving Zyra up to the S plus tier, because I actually think that she's way stronger than what I initially thought, right? So here's the point where I messed up, right? So here, I actually flash away in fear. Now I actually get really lucky here because Jhin was on a reload and couldn't actually finish me off. So I don't actually think I needed to flash, but I just played safe because he was finishing his reload and I was kind of afraid that he would finish the reload and then flash auto me for the kill, and then I step up again and now I'm in trouble again. He has the 4th shot this time, but thankfully he's not in range and we're not gonna be taken down, thankfully. As you can see, the early game is kind of a mini disaster. Now Yone does come in for a gank and is able to get first blood onto the Zyra, so we do kind of get a little bit of a save there from our jungler. I mean, honestly, jungle is such a OP role in my opinion that, like, it can turn a losing lane into a winning lane, and it can turn a winning lane into a losing lane. So yeah, jungle does have a lot of power in this game. You can see that with that kill on Zyra, now we can use Yuumi's passive to kind of heal up, and now we're back to a kind of okay kind of state in general in the game right now. So next thing I'm going to talk about is going to be the Shield Bow, right? So in this match you will notice a couple of things. Now firstly, for once in a long time, I actually don't have cleanse, because in this particular game, I actually don't think cleanse is essential. Now, as I mentioned in my ADC summoner spells video, check that one out if you haven't, where I explain which summoner spells ADCs should take in detail. Cleanse is best taken when the enemy relies on CC a lot. Now, what do I mean by rely on CC? Obviously, a lot of champions have CC, like Zyra here has CC, Jin does as well. But what I mean by that is, if the champion needs to hit that spell to like hit the rest of their combo or something like that, that's the most essential. So examples of this are, for example, Ahri with her charm, where when you get charm, you get hit by everything else, or Lux with her root, right? When you get hit by Lux root, you're gonna get hit by Lux E and Lux ult, you're gonna take full combos worth of damage. You need cleanse to escape the CC to prevent taking that combo damage. But in this case, of course, in any case, CC is always gonna be useful. But in this case, for example, Zyra, if Zyra hits her E, granted, it does allow her to hit her Q and ulti a lot more easily. However, even without hitting her E, she can still hit her Q and ult you pretty easily. And Jin as well, his CC is more a follow-up, like when someone else hits a spell and he follows up with a CC, like what he's trying to do here. His CC is not essential to his combo or anything like that. He can just walk up and auto you without CCing you at all. And the rest of the team, no one really has a lot of CC. Sion maybe has a knockup on the ulti and the Q as well, but again, that's not essential to his combo, and you should be able to dodge a Sion ult majority of the time, as well as walk out of the Sion Q unless he's trapping in the bush. So overall, I think that Ghost is kind of more useful here. Also with Ghost, you can try to kite out Sion and Shyvana in particular. So I did decide to go for Ghost this game instead of Cleanse, right? So now we talk about the summoner spells, let's talk about the item, right? So we have the Shield Bow versus Stormrazor versus Bloodthirster argument, you know, for Jinx, right? So as I mentioned, I actually talked a lot about Bloodthirster versus Shield Bow and Bloodthirster versus Stormrazor, and the main reason why I compare these two is because Bloodthirster is the general default for most champions, right? So with Bloodthirster as a default, there's no real reason to compare Stormrazor to Shield Bow, because the bridging item in between them is sort of Bloodthirster, right? So normally you would always go Bloodthirster as a default, and when the situation calls for it, you can go for a Stormrazor when you're fit, or you can go for a Shield Bow when there's a lot of like enemy threats on you, right? So I wouldn't say this game has a particularly high amount of enemy threats. I mean, yes, Zyra does have a lot of burst damage, Jin does have a lot of burst damage, and Shyvana and or Sion can get on top of you easily, but I would say the enemy team is a generally quite regular team comp. It's not like they have a Rengar and Kha'Zix and, you know, a lot of assassins or anything like that. So I wouldn't particularly say this is the best game for Shield Bow in particular. However, Shield Bow's safety is always kind of going to come in handy. And another thing about Shield Bow is also the Shield Bow build path is the same as the Stormrazor build path. So if you already decide you don't want to go for Bloodthirster, because some people actually don't really like Bloodthirster, you can, you know, very easily pivot between Stormrazor and Shield Bow, which is another added benefit of that. Which is that they both build out of like basically the exact same items. So you can, you know, for example, imagine you kind of wanted to build Stormrazor, right? You end up not getting fed, end up getting like getting killed instead, right? As here, Zyra gets rooted under the tower and is pretty much dead here. We are going to try to ult her down, but it doesn't work. So eventually we have to blow our flashes to kill her. Jin is in deep trouble as well, with Ahri coming off of the roam, getting the damage down to kill the Jin. Now, honestly, I think if Ahri didn't come from the roam, I don't think me and Yuumi could have killed the Jin. I mean, we might be able to dive the tower, but I don't think we would have gotten the kill. So yeah. Yeah, there is a lot of build flexibility in Jinx in terms of the first item options. The rest of the items pretty much are stock standard. You don't really rotate the rest of your items, but the first item does have a lot of flexibility. So Bloodthirster, as a default, gives you the best scaling and healing as well. Stormrazor gives you the best early game damage and allows you to snowball, and Shield Bow gives you the extra level of safety, particularly useful when there are a lot of assassins and such. So here, off of those kills, we pretty much forced the first tower, right? But as a result of forcing the first tower, Yuumi did detach and get thumped by the Zyra CC and is not able to attach, so Yuumi does take the fall for that one. However, arguably, Yuumi's death for a first tower is actually a pretty good deal, all things considered, right? Especially because our tower was like at 30 HP and would have died with just a tickle, and it did, right? So our tower is now dead, right? So the fact that we're able to basically steal the first tower goal away from the enemy team is a big win in my books. So arguably a worth trade. So yeah, I'm not gonna kind of harp too much on the comparisons between Bloodthirster versus Shield Bow and Bloodthirster versus Stormrazor, because we've kind of you know, talked about it to death in the last couple of videos. Now, I could technically talk about Stormraiser versus Shieldbow, but I think the difference between Stormraiser and Shieldbow is so stark that there's not a lot to really debate about, right? As here, we actually tried to cut off the Shyvana's escape, but it wasn't even necessary. We don't even get the assist here because we didn't even get off a single auto on her, and Ahri simply gets the kill. And now here we have the situation where Zyra and Jhin are in the mid lane. Now, initially they saw us on the Skull Vision, so I'm not sure why they are so far overextended. This allows Yuumi to get off the root onto the Jhin. We get the kill onto the Jhin. Zyra gets the knockup for the peel on herself, and then we simply escape with a kill, which is, you know, fine. Alright, so yeah, as I mentioned, Shieldbow is like for safety and Stormraiser is like for snowballing. So the items are so different that there's no real point of going to an in-depth comparison between them. And we've already talked about it. The comparisons between Bloodthirster and both of these items in our last couple of videos, so do check those out if you want a little bit of a more detailed explanation. But I think for this video, I'm going to focus a little bit more about what's happening in the gameplay right now, which is that I'm trying to get the ulti to help a little bit on mid lane, but I do miss. Now I'm rotating over to the fight. Kayle just popped her ulti, so she is vulnerable now, and she does end up going down. Sion now finds herself severely overextended, dies to the Ahri. We get 2 resets, and we are in a pretty fine spot right now. So we're 2-0-3. As Jinx, when you get kills in the early to mid game, you're always going to be happy with that, because in the late game when you hit like 3-4 items is where you really hit your spikes, right? And then you're gonna be a force to be reckoned with. So if you don't die and if you get a couple of kills or assists in the early game, you're pretty much gonna be happy. Right, so play is being made in the top lane. Here I'm trying to stop the Jhin from getting away. Now, Jinx does have a lot of kill potential if she hits the W. Look at the damage, by the way. Jhin is in trouble. Now, here I was thinking of whether I need to flash the wall or not, but it's just Kayle and Jhin, so I'm not overly scared. They're both like 0 and 2 at the moment. We're trying to snipe out Shyvana under tower. It doesn't quite work out. Now, here, Jhin is trying to snipe Ahri when there are both myself and Yuumi there to block for her, so there's no real way he's going to get the kill onto the Ahri. The Ahri just simply walks out. Doesn't have to blow, you know, ult or anything. She's fine. And here Sion is severely overextended. Now, we don't need to send 5 people to deal with a Sion, right? But I really just wanted to at least get an assist, right? Since I'm already kind of walking out. And with the reset, I can rotate quickly to mid and defend the mid tower. So I guess it's not kind of pro of Jinx, which is that, you know, unlike other champions that kind of waste their time, if I was in any other champion, that would have been a bad play, because it's a waste of time to try to stop a Sion who's already dead. Like, you have 3 people collapsing on him already. There's no way he's going to survive this, unless no one blocks his escape route and he just ults away. However, you know, here with Jinx, you can get like simply an auto off and then reset off of him, and then use that reset movement speed to run over to another lane, and then as a result save yourself, you know, some time. And like, you don't really lose out too much by making that early rotation onto the Sion. Unless you take like 1 eternity to kill him, then it's not worth. But in this case, we basically bursted him down as a team. Obviously, you cannot be tanking 5 people's worth of damage here. Now, Shyvana here, in trouble with the Yone. I do end up landing my Zap, which then gives me the reset. But the reset here is not very useful, because I don't really have anything to really do with the reset. Nowhere to run, nowhere to attack. Here, Yone ends up going in onto everybody. Here I end up in a little bit of trouble in a 1v1 against Kayle, and because of the kill out, Kayle is able to attack me through my shield bow and ends up killing me, giving me my first death of the game. Shield bow there, helpful but not really, as it was helpful in the sense that I definitely would have would not have survived if I didn't have shield bow, but then again, even with the shield bow, I didn't survive anyway, right? So it's sort of like, if you're gonna die anyway, then shield bow technically doesn't really help in that particular situation. But of course, in some other situations, it would actually have been, you know, pretty helpful. So overall, my team as a whole is doing well. You can see we have a 1k gold lead, you know, in the top lane, in the mid lane, in the jungle, myself as well over the Jhin. And the only place where we don't have a lead is in the support position. Of course, Yuumi doesn't really farm at all, and Zyra can actually farm, so that's probably one of the main reasons why. Zyra also does have 2 kills. So yeah. Here, Sion is once again split pushing. Here I'm just cutting him out. He can't really reach me anyway. So here we get the slow onto Zyra. Zyra is in a deep trouble here. We get the ulti on her and we get the kill. And then now we're going to deal with the Sion. Now, Ornn is blocking his escape. So it's a simple matter of just autoing him down. Eventually we'll get the kill on him. Unfortunately here, we don't get the kill, but Ornn gets the kill. Either which way, you know, it's going to be a pretty... It's you know, it's fine, right? We stop the Sion. We get the kill on the Zyra as well. Looks like Jhin has also died at the hands of my team. And whilst this is all happening, with no lane to push, right, we're just gonna go and farm the jungle. Mid lane is all the way to the inhib. Ornn is farming one of the side lanes, Ahri is farming the other, and we have nowhere to really farm, right? And in this situations is kind of where like you kind of do have to just find farm wherever you can, and if it's the jungle, then it's the jungle, right? So here we get the components for the Magnetic Blaster. Magnetic Blaster, of course, is going to be our next item. We're not too close to it at the moment. I mean, we are only like less than 600 gold away since we have both the components, but we're not exactly, very, very close. We're looking for that last bit of farm. Now, Ornn is getting like 4v1 down there in the bottom lane. Obviously, there's no way he's going to survive a 4v1, so he does promptly go down. We just want to clear the minion wave and then escape out of there. Now, here since we see Sion and Shyvana in the bottom lane, and Shyvana is actually resetting, this is prime time to go for Baron, right? So, this is kind of why whenever you play a jungle, you cannot be showing up on the opposite side of Baron. And just on vision, because a smart team is just gonna rush the Baron like what we're doing here, and Yone is very poor Baron secure, but we eventually do get it. And here, I'm not sure why Yone is going in here. Like, we don't need to fight here. Like, the whole enemy team realizes that we're doing Baron, so they're all rotating here. So all we need to do is get the Baron and back, right? But Yone decides to go ham and gets the Baron and goes in, which basically makes it a huge waste because it ends up that Yuumi and Yone are now both dead, so we're not going to make very good use of Baron pushing compared to what we could have if everybody was alive. In that situation, of course, we knew that Ornn was dead, so it was already a 4v5. Furthermore, of course, the enemy team was all rotating here. We already knew that because Zyra was shown checking the Baron, and we knew that whole enemy team is going to be rotating, obviously, right? Here we forced the kill ultimate, and we're going to be happy with that. We're going to kind of just back off a little bit. Now, Jinx is trying to ult us. Zyra does end up dying. We do get the reset. Unfortunately, Ornn is kind of just taking all of the kills, which is really horrible because obviously Ornn is only going to be building tank items, and we really need kills to buy our damage items. But, it is what it is. In solo queue, people are not going to be giving you kills for no good reason. And you're just going to have to live with getting assists sometimes. Yeah, so now here we're on to the dragon. It's so far one dragon apiece, so this is not going to be sold for either team, but we're just taking it off the map to deny the enemy team. Sion is on a trip around the world, ults into our base. I think probably a driving error there. Shyvana somehow survives that, by the way. I'm not sure how she survives that. I try to ult her, but it doesn't actually hit. Of course, the Jinx ult is pretty predictable. That's going to come when you're like 1 HP. Now here we flash out because we're getting tower aggro, and we got the Zyra ulti was going to knock us up under tower. Now here Yone gets assassinated by the Shyvana, who is doing pretty well, to be honest, all things considered, that her team is so behind. And now we get the inhib in the bottom lane as well. Kill ult comes in. Now we have a Yuumi with us, so we're just trying to blast the, like the two of them. However, of course, as you guys can see, we do have a situation where we're taking a lot of damage. We are out of mana, right? So we're gonna go steal the enemy's blue buff to kind of solve our mana issues here. You can see Yuumi can easily heal us back to full health, right? But we do need the mana to so-called have the ammo to launch the rockets, right? Because in teamfights, you don't want to be using your minigun for the most part, right? You always want to be using a rocket so you get the bonus range and the AoE splash as well. In teamfights, you don't want to be using the minigun unless you're in a 1v1 or very particular situations. Like in the mid late game, you're normally using rockets almost all of the time. So blue buff is very important for Jinx to have. Now, thankfully, way back when, Riot did make the change that, of course, after 12 minutes, the buff gets given to everybody. Now, previously, you kind of had to fight for the blue buff because Jinx actually really needs the blue buff to spam her rockets. And your mage might want the blue buff, and your support might want the blue buff, things like that. So now you can get the blue buff very easily as long as your team doesn't lose the blue buff to the enemy team. And there you can see a fight is breaking out in the bottom lane. Shyvana is chasing down the Ahri. Ahri nearly actually kills Shyvana, right? I could try to snipe with the ulti, but I can't really guess where she is. So I don't want to waste it. Sion is like kind of ulting to our base again, like ulting into the tower. Ornn is pushing the top lane. Ornn is now backing to stop Sion. I actually don't think that's necessary. I think we can just kind of force the enemy's base down, because with Shyvana dead and with Sion gone, we will be in a 4v3, and we could potentially try to end the game. So here we reset off the tower, kill ult comes in. Once again, it's a very similar situation where we're now stuck with our Yuumi, and we're just fighting the enemy team. Now shield bow there procced and absorbed a lot of damage, by the way. They actually ate through my entire shield pretty much instantly, so without the shield bow I might have died. So as you guys can see, shield bow does indeed come in handy. In the meanwhile, the entire time Yone has been soloing Baron, so we do get the Baron. Elder is going to be spawning in half a minute's time or so, and the game is kind of getting to a little bit long, right? Because yeah, it's not quite over just yet. So here we actually get a QSS, seeing as we don't have the cleanse, right? So of course QSS is still going to be coming pretty handy if we get hit by any kind of rogue CC, and we also get the anti-heal going, and we're going to rotate over to the Elder Dragon area. Now my whole team is already in the Elder Dragon area. We're going to get the ward over the wall to kind of check if the enemy team is coming. Now they look like they're all going to be rotating from mid lane if anything, so we're all trapping in this bush, right? Sion is the victim of the trap. Here you can see it's a pretty unfortunate situation. So here I get the kill on Sion. I'm gonna go for the resets. I get the kill on Kale. I'm on the double, right? I flash in going for the penta, but Yuumi kind of ditches me for the Yone, and I end up in a situation where I'm in the middle of everybody with no Yuumi, which means that I don't get the Yuumi ulti, I don't get the Veil, I don't get the Yuumi healing, and I basically find myself in a horrible out of position kind of location where I end up dying. Now thankfully my team cleans up the fight and we end the game anyway, so that was a pretty awkward situation to say the least. So anyways, with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching the video. I'm gonna leave you guys with the stats as usual, and goodbye.